All right, I think we'll get started. You guys good? All right, well, hello, everybody. I have a long table here. There's an even longer one, I think, online. Thank you all for joining. I'm Brian Manoli. I'm the Executive Director for the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency. I'm encouraged to see a few faces that I haven't seen in past meetings, so we're looking forward to get your input today. As you'll soon be introduced, we're working on a plan in the South Norwalk community. We've been working on it for what, about a year now, Ken?
Yep.
About a year. Taking it through a series of public meetings. We have peripheral community advisory groups that have been advising some of the plans and recommendations. We'll get you caught up if you haven't, been to a meeting previously, but we'll talk a little bit about the work we've done to sort of assess existing conditions. And then tonight, the focus is really on some initial policy recommendations and obtaining your feedback on them. We really want to make these as meaningful and as sort of implementable as possible. So that would be the theme and focus of this. And then the overarching theme of the plan has really been just to recognize some of the challenges that are going on in the South Norwalk community, have a very honest and open discussion about them, and then develop some strategic recommendations to improve what we're referring to, as the overall quality of life. There's a lot of things that go into the lived experience in any community, but we've been fortunate to learn a lot about South Norwalk during this plan. And tonight we're going to talk about what we've learned and then hear from you on some of the things that we think may be potential solutions to some of the issues and opportunities that we've identified through this. So we're joined by our consultants, VHB. They'll give you a very brief presentation, and we're really hoping to have an interactive discussion. Of course, accommodating people that are here in person, but also online. And yeah, so we'll take it from there. So Ken, I could kick it over to you from that.
Great. Thanks, Brian, and thanks everyone for taking a portion of your evening out to be with us. So we have as Brian mentioned, a very brief presentation. Some of you, I recognize some folks here, but others may be new to the process. So we're gonna kind of just give you a quick overview of the work that we've done tonight up till now. And as Brian said, we've been at this now for about 11 months and we're closing in on completing our work. But the majority of this evening is going to be spent on an interactive discussion around these boards that you see up on the easels. And for those of you online, we do have a similar exercise that we'll be running through online with all of you. So my name's Ken Schwartz. I'm a senior vice president and head up our planning practice at VHB. We're a firm that's up and down the East Coast, where we've got an office in Connecticut. I'm based out of our Massachusetts office. I do a lot of these community-based planning studies throughout the East Coast. Joining me, I'll let Michael and Jenny introduce themselves.
Michael Goldenberg. I'm an urban planner based out of our New York City office.
I'm Jennifer Nelson. I'm an urban planner based out of our Watertown office.
So just a couple of quick slides up front. Just the overall purpose of tonight is we're going to review the work that we've done to date. Summarize, we've gotten a lot of really good community input. These plans that we do are really informed by the community, and we want to hear from you all tonight to continue to get information and learn from all of you in terms of what you like, what your concerns are, your reactions to some of our recommendations. But the focus is going to be around the recommendations for improvements. We're at the portion of our study now where we're coming up with potential solutions. And some of them are near term, others are more long term, but we've got a menu of solutions that we're going to be sharing with you tonight, and we want to get your input on that. This slide here is just our goals and objectives. You can see that we've got a study area that's defined up on the slide on the right. It's the area immediately south of the South Norwalk train station. And the focus of the study is really around disinvestment, displacement, gentrification, quality of life, focusing on developing strategies that improve the quality of life for the South Norwalk residents as well as the business owners in the community. So, our agenda, we're gonna highlight the existing conditions. We've done a lot of really good analysis around existing conditions that has been informed by both the community input as well as data that we've assembled. This is our second public meeting that we're having. We've done a survey with the Community Advisory Committee. We've also had a series of meetings with the Community Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. We're going to highlight the input that we've received from all those groups. And then the focus is going to be on the draft policy recommendations. We'll talk about next steps, and then this activity that we've got where we're going to kind of, as a group of us, walk around and get your input on what you like, questions that you have, areas that you think really need to be focused, that we really need to focus on. So that's going to be number 6 is going to be the one area that we're going to spend the most amount of time tonight. So I'm going to highlight just at a very high level some of the existing conditions and takeaways from our analysis. So there are 6 areas of study: land use and open space, environment, real estate, digital equity, community health and safety, and transportation. And on the right, I'm not going to walk through each of these individually, but these are the sort of key takeaways from our analysis. So for example, under land use and open space, the analysis that we've done, and again, this is at a very high level, we've got all the data that supports these statements, that within the study area, the land uses are not well connected. There's a lot of industrial property in the South Norwalk neighborhood, and those industrial parcels create visual and physical barriers. They also generate a lot of truck traffic in the neighborhood, which is something that's a concern to the community. And there's a lack of programmed open space. There are some parks and open space in the neighborhood, but the area could use more programmed open space. On the environment side, there's a significant lack of tree cover in the neighborhood. We have a map that identified where there are trees in the South Norwalk neighborhood, and it's really quite remarkable to see how the lack of trees in South Norwalk in comparison to the rest of the city. And that creates risks around extreme heat events. There also is flooding that poses risks to people and infrastructure. And there also are brownfield sites, contaminated parcels within the study area. From a real estate standpoint, rising housing costs are making the area less affordable. The census data indicates that it's a young population, it's a diverse population, about 30% are foreign born, that many of the households are low income, making under $50,000 a year, and the area rent is higher than the city average within the neighborhood. So there are some real challenges from a real estate standpoint, and we do have on the call on the line representatives from ESI, which is one of the consultants working with us that really did quite a bit of analysis around the real estate market conditions, and they're available to answer any questions that we have. From a digital equity standpoint, the lack of internet access, the lack of access to digital devices creates social inequality issues within the community, and that trainings must be accessible and offered in multiple languages so that the residents can get trained on where they can get access to internet and get educated on the different programs that are out there. From a community health and safety standpoint, the neighborhood, our study area, has a higher risk for obesity and diabetes in comparison to the surrounding census tracts. So we looked at the data, and there are elevated risks for obesity and diabetes within the community, and there's limited access to healthy food. We'll talk about this in a moment, particularly around educating the community around the benefits of eating healthy foods. And then from a transportation standpoint, the lack of multimodal transportation options, making the neighborhood safe from a walking and biking and scootering perspective. Opportunities to create mobility hubs to support transportation changes, particularly around the Sono train station. And then, as I mentioned earlier, significant truck traffic. And you'll see that one of our recommendations is to explore the possibility of designated truck routes so that the trucks are not infiltrating the neighborhood streets within the South Norwalk neighborhood. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael, who will highlight some of the takeaways that we've heard from the community and the CAC and TAC.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ken. So our first community meeting was held in mid-November, and I won't go through all of the topics that we heard about, but here's sort of an assortment of feedback that we heard, including increased tree planting to try to mitigate that heat island effect. We had a good discussion around enforcement, whether that's illegal and unsafe parking or vagrancy or overcrowding in rental homes. We also heard a lot about just truck route enforcement and just sort of the issues and that are brought with an increase in truck traffic to the residential neighborhoods. We also heard a great deal about home ownership, increasing financial assistance, incentives, and just overall housing affordability and pathways to housing ownership. And along with truck traffic, heard a lot about the public health impacts, air quality impacts associated with that. We conducted, as Brian mentioned, we have an established community advisory committee as part of this project, and we have met with them several times, but in the fall of last year, we put a survey together to solicit some of their feedback, and here are the top three items in each kind of category on the left. So in terms of infrastructure enhancements, heard a lot about better connectivity with public transit, additional on and off street parking supply, and of course, truck traffic. On the smart cities topics, we heard affordable high-speed internet, better public Wi-Fi, increasing access to digital devices, and digital literacy education. So again, this is some TAC feedback, some additional community feedback, but really our intent is to focus on, we heard the need to focus on specific locations for investment, and that was one of the reasons we're gathered here today. We really want to hear from you on that. We're also looking to leverage some of the codes and policies that the city has in place regarding tree planting or enforcement through the city's click and request. So really we're looking to bring in new policies, but also leverage existing policies to the extent that we can as well. So again, here are some potential solutions, potential recommendations in the land use category, really looking to develop pocket parks where applicable, maybe enhance some of the frontages of industrial properties, either through additional setbacks or improved landscaping or facade improvements. Really, a lot of the study area. The eastern half of the study area is subject to storm surge and flooding, and we want to see what we can do to improve those conditions as well. And again, the three items we heard most about from the community were community health and safety, transportation, and real estate. So really these three topics circled in red were real highlights or areas of focus. Just in terms of next steps, we're here on January 7th. Happy New Year to you all. So our second community meeting, we are starting to develop our draft, our community plan. So that should be available for at least internal review in late January. And we're looking to get our final plan out in February, and of course, incorporating the feedback we've received to date and in the future as well. Does anyone have any questions at this point? No. So now I'll hand it over to Jenny, who will discuss a bit about our activity this evening.
Hi, everyone. So as you can see, there are 6 boards around the room. Each one has a specific focus or that's associated with it. So we are going to ask you to provide commentary on these boards. You'll see that there are some slides next to it, or a document that highlights some existing conditions analysis that we've done, which Ken spoke about briefly. But this is if you want like a bit more information. This was all presented during our first public meeting. But you are welcome to review it. We're gonna ask that you take these sticker dots and take 3 per board and place the dots next to the policy option that you really support, that you feel strongly about, that you think, you know, is best suited for the community. You can place all 3 stickers next to one item if you like feel exceptionally strong about it, or you can spread it out between 3 different policies that you are that you support. In terms of the ones with maps, we're gonna ask that you take a sticky note if you have an idea about something that can be tied geographically, such as, you know, when we're talking about tree plantings or pocket parks, or small green spaces, or, you know, if you want to see mesh networks to support Wi-Fi connectivity in the area, these are things that can have like geographic locations. And that's the thing that we're really interested in collecting and hearing more about, because you know the area better than any of us do. So if you have something that needs to be noted and that can tie to a specific street or to a specific intersection and whatnot, those are all the points that we want to capture in tonight's meeting.
One thing, just to reiterate what Jenny said, one of the feedback that we got from both the CAC and the TAC is that whilst many of these recommendations are sort of generic statements, to the extent that we can be site specific, like if we're talking about tree plantings, what specific street needs the trees the most? What particular sidewalk needs to be enhanced? You know, if there's if there's truck traffic that's particularly problematic, on what street is that truck traffic most problematic? So if you use the sticky notes to really help us get as geographically specific as we can, because again, you know the area better than we do in terms of the day-to-day, so help us in that regard.
For those folks who are online, we are going to be doing something similar. I'm going to be facilitating a virtual version of these boards, so we're going to follow kind of the same mechanics as the in-person activity, but I'll walk you through that in a couple of minutes. Right now, are there any questions? Perfect.
Any specific questions, reactions, or thoughts before we get into the breakouts? Anything here that surprised you that was like, wow, I didn't know that, or why are you doing that?
The only thing I question a little bit is the idea of the trees. It's a great idea to plant more. There's a pretty good program in town right now that is planting
Yes,
trees.
yes.
So is it maybe more a function of turning that over to the group that is already doing that and saying, what is the best way to
Yeah.
do it? The tree warden, for instance, say, where do we need to
Do you
plant
want to
trees?
answer that, or you want?
I think it's obviously leveraging the existing program. I think just having a mechanism to be responsive to community need. I think that could be the answer, and that's what we want to hear tonight. Maybe that is the potential solution that we should be considering. I think there's also, at the last meeting, we kind of showed that the map of where the cover is missing, so there's also some strategic ways we could try to influence that.
Well, the city is doing a master
Right.
plan right now.
That's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
I mean,
overlapping
so-
what's already happening.
And a canopy plan and all that, so that's already in place.
Mhm.
So maybe it's a matter of putting more money into it, but.
We're just
Is everything-
overlaying two sheets and see
Yeah.
where.
Sorry, Johan, you have something?
No, pretty much Tom and the gentleman here pretty much covered the topic. Yeah, it was almost like, what's gonna be the division of labor, how much overlap is there, how much collaboration will there be between, let's say, identifying specific locations for tree planting, and let's say like the tree liaison program, the tree master plan, envisions going forward once it's complete, so.
Was there any study in regard to like the area that has those restaurants that keep opening and closing? So making that sort of a pedestrian mall, closing it off to traffic, which would avoid trucks going through and other things like that?
We haven't studied that as part of this plan, but I know that's what we've got. I don't know if you want to. It's the road, Washington Street.
Washington Street.
The fire, I think, was the.
Yeah, there's a problem with getting access to parking along the street. Is it the
Well, you avoid cars completely. Or would you just make it like a pedestrian walking
We can't
space like
because-
Burlington, Vermont? for
no,
example?
we've talked about that there are requirements. I mean, which department is it? Keith, you may know.
Pearl Street.
It's Pearl Street. Pearl, that needs access for cars. Now, we've talked about having event days and sort of limiting on certain days, but to close it off entirely is very difficult. It also creates traffic issues on the surrounding streets.
Yeah, and in connection with that, they talked about truck traffic. Is there any way, has there any been studied where you can have an alternate route for trucks to get to their destinations and factories and things?
We're looking into that. There are, a whole series of sort of, regulatory things that need to be overcome in terms of, working with the state to get a designated truck route, but we're exploring that.
And this is good stuff for the transportation board too, so we just make sure we
Okay.
can log it all, and we'll have it addressed in the plan.
Did you want to mention
Yeah,
yeah.
so for stores and shops, I have a program, I'm a local Norwalk resident, my name is Ari Fox. We started a program called Go Yocal, which is to shop local. It's very, very hyper local. It's not a social app. It's more of a marketing and advertising app, but what it does is it shares the collective for the entire town for the smallest business to share the cost of the marketing. So it's not like you're paying, all the listings are free. You can put your company up there for free. It kind of works like LinkedIn. You set yourself up, you can create your profile for your company. And if you want to use the premium service, it's like $29 a month. But what it is it's taking like you talk about the Chamber of Commerce. And if everybody in the room of Chamber of Commerce, it's the entire Chamber of Commerce marketing themselves to the community. So it's a neighborhood marketing advertising app. It's nothing like it exists. And shoppers actually get points as well to earn for trips and other things. So it's a great program to help boost the economy for local and hyper local small store services. So it's a good program.
And I think one of the things too, even just having you here, which I appreciate, is that building the community business support services into the plan a little bit
Yes,
further.
yeah.
I think that's something we definitely need to
Yeah,
have a little bit more attention to.
I'm glad that you
So it's
brought this
appreciated.
up because to date, we haven't talked about that, but I think
I
we
would love to
would.
work with you on it, at another time if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if a few people walked in. Do you want to just reiterate the activity real quick, just to
Sure.
catch people up, and then
Yeah.
we can get going on it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, next to the boards, each of these boards kind of, it correlates with a different chapter that we're looking at or a different focus area that we're looking at. There are some slides next to it, each board that have existing conditions analysis, so some maps, some data. We have these sticky dots, if you take 3 per board, to highlight a policy that you feel really strongly about. You can put all 3 stickers next to one policy option, or you can spread them out between 3, or you could do 2 and 1, whatever. We just want to kind of get some priorities out of all of the options that we have here. And then the sticky notes are for geographically tied recommendations or suggestions, comments, feedback, anything that could be tied. I know we talked about tree planting, but also enforcement, also traffic. If there's specific routes that you notice, there's like a lot of trucks coming through, because that's been something that's come up again and again. That's something that we really want to know about so that we can further investigate and then come up with some strategic options for the redevelopment agency to look into. I think it's also important to note that when we're creating our final plan, we're going to be creating an implementation matrix, so it will address not only the action, but the responsible parties for that and an estimated timeline. So
Right.
that'll give a little bit more clarity to residents and to business owners about who's gonna be doing what. Because I think you're right, there's like a lot of potential for overlap when everyone's working towards the same things. So that's gonna help clarify things as well.
So there are 6 boards, 6 stations. So after you're done with one, move to the next one. And you get 3 dots per station. And then when you're done with that station, you'll get a new 3 dots for the next one. And I will be on this side, Michael will be on this side, and Jenny will be facilitating the online. So we're available to answer any questions that you have. Yes.
Yeah, I just had, the only question I have is I just like to know who's, like you said, I don't know who you are. I just like to know who the staff and who the project people are.
Yep.
I know I was a little bit late, but.
Sure. So.
Yes, I'm Brian Bedoya, the Executive Director for Norwalk Redevelopment, and then VHB if you wanna.
So I am from VHB. We're the consultant that's been working with the redevelopment agency. My name is Ken Schwartz.
I'm Michael with VHB.
Okay,
I'm Jenny, also at VHB.
okay,
And the 3 of us are urban planners.
okay, great. All right, thank you.
Yeah. And we'll be around for any questions as you get started, just let us know.
And while we still have your concentration and your focus, if you could sign in on the sign-on sheets in the center of the table, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, we can keep you up to date when the plans are ready
Right,
and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
Feel free to sign up. You're going for the cookies, I know.
Nah. You just know me too well.
Yeah, I know. Cool. What do you think? Right?
Okay, people, can people hear me? Yeah. I did not realize I was muted that whole time. I'm so sorry. I was talking to myself. But if you could copy this link and paste it into a browser, this is what's going to bring you to the virtual boards that we're going to be looking at here. All right, so I'm going to get started with the people who are in here. I'm just going to check to see how many, we still have some participants in here. I'm sorry, I was late. All right, again, one last time. If you can see this link here, I'm going to ask that you put this into a browser window and open it. And it's going to bring you to a mural board, which is basically a dashboard for us to interact together. So you can use your mouse or trackpad to zoom in or out to the boards. We're going to draw directly on the map using the pen tool, which is over here on the left-hand side. You can also comment on a sticky note. There are a handful of sticky notes that I already created. And I said, please type your comment into the Zoom chat, but I don't think the commenting is allowed at this point. But we will have your contacts so that we can follow up with an email if necessary. So for these boards, I'm gonna jump right into it. So we have a list of potential solutions. These are options, policy options that have been identified by the project teams, by the project team to date. So under land use, we're talking about working with landowners to initiate redevelopment of brownfield sites, implementing pocket park pilot projects. Pocket parks are small little green spaces dedicated for not only your typical parks, but also like stormwater infrastructure or playscapes or plazas where people can sit and hang out or have coffee. We also have promoting the city's existing storefront improvement program, offering financial incentives to property owners to improve their facades, and expediting permitting and review processes for improvement projects. So people who are in this mural, if you select one of these sticky notes, you can actually drag it and move it around and type on it and say, if you have a suggestion here, like, I think the Norwalk Redevelopment Authority or agency should do this here. And you can zoom in and type which street you think, this thing needs to be done here. There's a lot of storefronts that are in bad shape on this street. So like the agency needs to look at how to increase or to improve and incentivize storefront improvement there. And you're welcome to also draw right on the board. You can do that by using the draw tool. More street trees, yes. That's been something that we've talked about in a lot of our public engagement efforts. We've talked to a community advisory committee and also a technical advisory committee who have said that we need more street trees. Protected bike lanes. Nice on that street there. More street trees and parks would be great. Oh, Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. So there is a project actually that's going to be, well, I know the city of Norwalk just got a grant to do a lot of street improvements on Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. So that's something that we're going to be including in the plan too, that we're going to refer to. Again, if you were just entering the mural now, we're wondering how the heck we got here. If you copy this and put this into a new browser or type it into a new browser, you can access this mural board that allows us to interact together. Safer streets to the South Norwalk train station. Yes. Enhance sidewalks and crossing opportunities around the South Norwalk School. Yes, absolutely. We noticed too that around the Springwood Park, there's a lack of sidewalks here, like all along this area. So one thing that I think we want to definitely include is adding sidewalks here. Because of course, this is pretty critical infrastructure here, the Springwood Park. Connected sidewalks, yes, absolutely. I'm gonna give this board another minute too. Please add your thoughts. Then we can also go to the next board too. And I'm gonna shift to a quieter spot. Please bear with me as I move myself. All right, that should be a bit better. I'm glad that we're having so many good conversations going on in the in-person meeting, but definitely need a little quiet for this too. Connect sidewalks and more trash bins. I see Emily B is typing that. That's really good to know. If there's a lot of trash that is escaping the trash bins that are currently in place or that there's nowhere to put it, that's definitely something that should be included in this plan. All right, I'm going to shift over to the next board. The next board has to do with environment and climate. So when we were talking about this and we were doing research for the environment and climate in the study area, there was a lot of talk about flooding, reusable energy, the city's adoption of renewable energy and incentives for new developers to include renewable energy like solar. There was also data showing, closely tied to street trees that is associated with extreme heat because there's a lack of street trees. So these are some of the things that we were exploring a bit more. Again, we know Springwood Park is right here and there's a fair amount of trees here. But in some of these dense neighborhoods, heat seems to be a real problem. And along these streets is where flooding from the coastline, where like storm surge is, could really do some damage to those businesses and those homes there. So if we were to identify a couple of environment and climate priorities for this neighborhood, what would they be? Would they be, if we were to have heat sensors and flood monitoring systems, should they be along these streets? Should it be along South Main Street, Meadow Street? If we're talking about extreme heat, should the city look into monitoring heat along Lexington Ave and Eli Ave, where there's some really dense development? Same thing for around Monterey Village. So these are things that we're really interested in here when it comes to the environment and climate risks. Again, more street trees, yes. Are there specific streets that you think we need to be focused on around here? Main Ave. South Main. South Main Street. Gotcha, South Main Street. It's doing great, doing great. A plan to address flooding. Absolutely. So there's a simultaneous plan that VHB and Norwalk. Yeah, there we go, Jocelyn. Love that. So there's a simultaneous plan going on between VHB and Norwalk Redevelopment Agency around, it's called Smart City or Smart City Technology. So that's where the city can incorporate different kinds of sensors or cameras or monitoring equipment to basically establish a way to monitor the trends for heat, for moisture, aka flooding, across large footprints. So I think one of the things that at least the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency wants to focus on is piloting a couple of those projects here. So it's really key, I guess, and for both projects to identify where people experience extreme heat, or where people experience flooding, especially like if there's stormwater infrastructure that is just simply not doing its job. So yes, Emily, I think that's your comment. Yeah, more maintenance or monitoring of drainage infrastructure. Absolutely. That's something that this kind of technology can help with too, because then you don't need people going out there to check it all the time. There can be alerts or a way that the city can monitor it on a large scale very quickly to assess potential risks to the community. Awesome. These are great comments, and I love the drawing too. A plan to address flooding here. Yes, absolutely. I know that there's a lot of parking lots and, pavement, impervious surfaces. That's where flooding can get bad really fast just because there is nowhere for water to go when you have an influx of rainwater or storm surge, coastal flooding. If you have if you have inadequate stormwater infrastructure and if you have a lack of green space that can basically absorb all that rainwater, this is also why street trees are important, but also parks and such can help alleviate some of that stormwater risk to neighboring residents and business owners. Protecting marshlands to help with flooding in these areas, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is a city-owned parcel down here. This little like tan area. So if there's stormwater infrastructure integrated there, that might help too, just to protect these businesses from potential flooding. Incentivizing green roofs for buildings. Oh, for commercial buildings. Yep, absolutely. I'll give us another couple of minutes on this one and then we can switch to the next board because there are 6 boards total that we're going to get through. But for people who are still in the Zoom meeting, who want to jump in to this mural, this is the link. If you type this into another browser, you should be able to open it and you can log in as just enter as a visitor. You don't have to make an account to do this activity. But this is how you get into it. And then you can start typing and drawing on these maps with us as well. All right, let's see what else we got over here. Are there any potential solutions that you feel most strongly about? Should the city prioritize incentivizing private adoption of renewable energy sources? Oh, creation of a clean energy dashboard. That's a big one too. That's part of the smart city plan that we're working on with the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency. when I was talking about the sensors before for temperatures and moisture sensors. So a clean energy dashboard would essentially tie together all of that technology and digital infrastructure and data sources so that there is a publicly accessible and visible dashboard or display of this data to the public. And it also helps the city understand A, the trends, and B, what's working and what's not working with our initiatives. You know, if we start I know that the city already has an active tree planting program that is doing well. But if, um, you know, in 5 years' time, we do a canopy analysis and we only have 1% more trees, obviously there needs to be some kind of uh, recognition that something needs to change there. And the same thing with flooding. If there's still significant flooding 5 years' time, how can we use the clean energy dashboard to kind of showcase, okay, we're going to be changing strategies here. So that's what the clean energy dashboard is referring to. Also developing community evacuation plans and establishing notification systems. That's a big one that we've talked about a few times in other meetings. And zoning regulations to restrict development in high-risk flood zones as well. All right, I'm going to pop over to the next station, which is real estate. You'll notice this doesn't have a map associated with it because this is kind of speaking to the whole of the study area. So there are several programs. Stephen, actually, if you want to talk about this, this board, then that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Am I coming through all right?
Yes. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name's Steve Matson. I'm a director with eConsult Solutions. We've been working with VHB on the SONO community plan, and we've been tackling the real estate existing conditions as well as some of the housing policy analysis that's kind of coincided with the work that's going on. As we've been thinking about the different policy solutions that we've kind of put together here that are in response to some of the feedback we've received over the course of the last 12 months. We are trying to really address, first and foremost, certainly affordability, but from a bigger picture, just trying to address those kind of quality of life concerns that are perhaps also impacting the housing world for those that live in the neighborhood. So in many ways, these issues are trying to address some of those things we've heard. I'll start actually from the bottom and then work my way up. Some of the like the largest feedback we've received has been on working with and addressing the blighted properties across the SONO neighborhood. During our site visit there, we had a good opportunity to walk around the neighborhood pretty extensively and got a good feel for what this looks like. When we think about this, the housing stock in the neighborhood is a bit older. It lends itself to homes and rental opportunities where the housing stock could improve in a lot of ways, both for homeowners and for renters that rent in some of these what I'll call middle density homes or duplexes, triplexes, and the like. So one of the ways that we're thinking about doing that is thinking about programs that perhaps provide some form of financial assistance for those homeowners that rent to folks in the neighborhood to consider different options and consider a program that would allow them to perhaps receive some form of tax abatement if they make certain facade improvements or home improvements. And then at the same end, also thinking about the affordability side on those that actually rent those homes, thinking about the different codes and tenant right commissions that are already existing in Norwalk. For instance, the city already has a fair rent commission. How can we leverage the current existing programs and policies available through the city, but also the state to kind of support those that live in the neighborhood? On the home ownership side, we heard a lot about that as well. we see that as a two-sided issue, those that are seeking to buy homes and those that currently exist as homeowners within the neighborhood. In terms, we know that homeownership is a costly endeavor in the South Norwalk neighborhood. We know that it's difficult to take on new loans or debt or credit to kind of finance either weatherization or home modifications that could make these things a reality for a lot of different homeowners. So what we're thinking about taking a deeper look into is possible maintenance and assistance programs, but also on the purchase side, making it a little bit easier to try to find ways to encourage down payment assistance or other upfront cost subsidies that would allow new homeowners or first-time homeowners an entryway into the South Norwalk neighborhood, knowing that the price of homes have been increasing fairly significantly in the South Norwalk neighborhood over the last 10 years, but especially so in the last 5 years since the pandemic. And then I'll just close with the creation and preservation of affordable housing. The study area and the South Norwalk neighborhood has a fairly significant amount of affordable housing already, but the need for that affordable housing and certainly deeply affordable housing for those at the lower end of the income spectrum is still very, very high. Like Ken mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, rents have increased very significantly within the neighborhood, and there's certainly the cost pressures overall that we've seen in the national market, the regional market, make Connecticut and broadly the Northeast corridor a very expensive place to live from a cost of living perspective, and obviously rent plays a big part of that. So where possible, we need to find ways, or we certainly feel that we need to find ways to help South Norwalk find more opportunities to encourage the development of new affordable homes, as well as opportunities to preserve the existing affordable housing stock that is in the neighborhood. So that's those things can be costly endeavors. So in this instance, we're really pointing to the available things that are currently on the books. Norwalk already has a very extensive inclusionary zoning policy that requires a certain percentage of new homes that are developed in certain zones, such as multifamily zones, to include a percentage of workforce housing. And in some instances also allows for a density bonus or essentially a higher density or a higher number of units on a parcel, depending on the amount of affordable housing that they include within the property. There's also federal programs and state programs, the state housing tax credit, as well as the federal low-income housing tax credit that could help incentivize and support the feasibility and viability of new development in the neighborhood. So in terms of like what we're looking for, I think in terms of as you're posting things on the board here, happy to hear any other solutions or programs that you guys may be thinking of. But if there's certain parts of the study area that you think would be ripe for new housing, would love to hear that. If there's certain parts of the neighborhood where you think the code enforcement issue is more significant, would love to hear that as well. And that will kind of allow us to think about these issues from that policy, program, and economic perspective to kind of make sure that the report captures how you guys are thinking about the issue and how you guys understand the issue on the ground.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Of course.
And I see that State Rep Travis Sims raised his hand, so I'm going to allow him to talk. All right. State Rep Travis Sims, I give you permission to speak if, let's see.
Hello there, and
Hi.
I do apologize. I didn't mean to raise my hand. However, I do know that I participated in a couple of the meetings that you had previously, and I guess not a lot has changed since then. And I just was stressed that we need to probably come up with a better marketing scheme to really get the public involved. And because it seems like every meeting there's a very, very low turnout or small amount of folks that are participating. But I think this is very important to the community as a whole. You know, and I mean, I like what I hear with all the, with the streetscapes, the, tree planting, et cetera. However, I think we really need to, get folks, to the table and get some further dialogue or input. So I hope that, you know, there will be, other opportunities for folks to participate, but also I will just stress again that we need to do more with really getting folks involved.
Thank you. I appreciate your commentary. Yeah, I think that's something that, we really value all of the community feedback that we can get. Every public meeting that we have, we're trying our best to document all of it. So that's something that we are going to continue to work on and work with the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency to improve too. So thank you for sharing that idea too. So anyone who has feedback on the solutions that Steve outlined for real estate in terms of affordable housing, realistic home ownership, and then using a carrot and stick approach to address absentee landlords, that those are definitely things that we want to hear more about if people have feedback. I think something, again, that just touching on what Steve had said earlier was when we had our first public meeting, there was a lot of conversation about enforcement of people using their properties for things that are not permitted by zoning and are not permitted in the city's bylaws. So if you are aware of some of the hot spots for those occurrences in the study area, that's something that we're definitely interested in hearing about. And I'm going to move on to the next board just to kind of keep us going. So connectivity and digital resources. This falls under the big umbrella term digital equity, which refers to people's ability to, one, get access to Wi-Fi and internet that is at speeds for the activities that they're trying to perform. Two, get access to digital devices, and three, get access to digital trainings and digital skills like workshops or interactive trainings that are either done remotely or done in person at places like the library or housing authority or schools. These are all things that can benefit South Norwalk. Of course, as we're talking about, people have said since the pandemic that we are entering this digital age a lot faster than people intended or that people expected to. So having everything online from your bank accounts to your healthcare to your education, there's a real need to address this infrastructure is exactly what it is. To make sure that people are connected adequately and that people have access to the resources that they need. So when we're talking about that, are there what we'd like to see in this board or suggestions or thoughts about where specifically if you or a loved one, such as like if you have an elderly parent or a child who you want them to start learning about how to use a computer appropriately and safely, where would you like to see these classes be held? Another big thing is language too. We know that there's upwards of 30% of residents in the South Norwalk area are foreign born. So if if there's a need for classes that are held in multiple languages, that would be something that's good to know. Another thing is what kinds of classes would you like to see? Fully in-person ones, fully remote ones that are just, if their redevelopment agency can get or have at least like a kind of dashboard or a website associated with where you can get free internet train or free digital skills training. That's another way that people can get access to this like knowledge platform. Another thing in terms of infrastructure is where is the Wi-Fi slow? Where is it really good? One thing that we've talked about for the smart city plan is bringing more Wi-Fi in through mesh networks, in which case there are essentially hotspots that are put up on telephone poles or on other kinds of standalone infrastructure, and that that can provide secure Wi-Fi resources for people, whether they're in the park or if they're in like a very heavily trafficked area, like that's really popular for people who are getting food and stuff. Like that might be a really ideal location for a mesh network so that people can come and do work there, or they can socialize and call people and have access to different resources. Public Wi-Fi at bus stops and shelters. Absolutely. That is a fantastic idea. So that people can access the bus schedules, because that's the last time you'd want to be without connectivity, is if you're waiting for something and you don't know when it's coming. I've been there. No Wi-Fi in Rowayton right now. Lots of traffic between Tono and North to Rowayton. Okay, noted. Another thing is I know that there's a new elementary school being built right here. One thing that I'll have to ask the agency is whether or not they're going to have some kind of exterior mesh network. During COVID-19, a lot of people, not just students, but also their parents, would use Wi-Fi from the schools to access or like to do their homework or to do a project. A lot of people also did this at, Dunkin' Donuts or local or like Starbucks. But if there's a way to kind of integrate and make those investments on a public scale too, how could we better support the residents by doing that? Public Wi-Fi would be great for our students. You think just generically speaking, like across the city, citywide Wi-Fi, or specific locations? Citywide. Public Wi-Fi at community centers and parks. Yep, yep. Especially maybe rental areas. Yep, yep. Okay, great. Do people know if there's public Wi-Fi at the train station as well? That's actually something that I don't that I'm not 100% sure about, but if somebody knows off the top of their head, that would be great too. I think the libraries need more funding and upgrades, not only in books, but in tech available compared to the neighboring libraries. Ours could use some TLC. Noted. And there's a lot of funding. At least, I've done a lot of projects in Massachusetts. I know that the Massachusetts state has a lot of funding, and there's some national library associations as well that has funding. And also there are federal funding sources available through the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, the NTIA. So that's something that we could include in the final report too, is some of these funding sources that are available at the national scale, both from public organizations and from the federal government and state government too, for that matter. Okay, I'm gonna move on to Station 5, Community Health and Safety. So a lot of these policy options revolve around enforcement of best practices for community policing, or just like community awareness from the public government. Better utilizing and spread awareness of Click Request, which is Norwalk's online platform for residents to report incidences. We've heard from people in previous meetings that they didn't even know that Norwalk had Click Request, so that's something that could be further marketed and promoted to residents of South Norwalk. Developing sidewalks, bike lanes, pedestrian trails for safe commuting, whether that's to a place of work or to a local coffee shop or retail spot or to parks. That's especially important for students and for older people. Installing air quality monitors, installing signage and interactive maps of community amenities. That's a big one too. If you have any feedback on any of these points, that's something that we would love to hear about. Launching community-wide public health initiatives, appointing community liaisons that are fluent in the prevalent local languages. With regards to healthy foods, some people have suggested at previous public meetings that we should encourage the city to partner with local chefs, or not just the city, but community-based organizations like libraries to partner with chefs or culinary schools to promote and fund nutrition initiatives. That could be like cooking classes if the library or the Norwalk Housing Authority can host cooking classes. That could go a long way to show people that there are ways that you can create healthy meals on a budget, which could mitigate some of the mitigate some harmful health risks. So I guess for this one, we can focus on, I know that when we're talking about like things that we could put on a map, especially sidewalks, bike lanes, pedestrian trails, keep in mind too that Norwalk did just receive a grant called a RAISE grant. It's from the federal government to do major improvements along Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. So they're going to be, I don't know the full extent of that project, but I know that it will include some roadway improvements, including bike lanes in some of those areas. Toddler children classes at the library that include cooking, baking, washing hands. Yep. Yep. And when we're talking about air quality monitors, that came up because a few residents who attended the last public meeting spoke about truck traffic along Dr. Martin Luther King Drive, and how they fear for the health of their kids because of the long-term impacts of poor air quality associated with heavy-duty trucks and machinery passing through. So that could be another thing that that the city invests in, is if there's actual air quality monitors to say, yes, this is a healthy level, no, this is an unhealthy level, and how do we mitigate it from there? That's one of the ideas that somebody has brought up at other public engagement sessions. I see someone's typing better signage, directing visitors to points of interest. Yes, absolutely. Sono has done a really good job branding themselves, but I think there could be improvements when it comes to like neighborhood level signage. And maybe there's some good examples that are out there already, but maybe that's something that could that this Redevelopment Agency and that the city can expand on. Health initiatives can start at the school level. Absolutely. So through partnerships with the schools too. It's a really good way to engage students, but also their parents as well. So that could be something that is, it's a really good idea. All right, and I know we're getting to the end of our time, so I'm going to swap over to the next one, which is transportation. And I see people are already over here, which is very good. Enhance and connect sidewalks. Improve bus network, mark clearly, and create shelters. Is that a general comment for the, I don't know who made this one. Is that a general comment for all of the bus shelters, or are there specific ones that are needing to be marked? Again, we're on the transportation board now. Let's see if I can. So we have a lot of feedback on transportation, so we need to kind of wheedle these down, these priorities down. So enforcing illegal parking, creating neighborhood permit parking program, establishing designated truck routes, filling sidewalk gaps, installing bike racks. Are there specific areas where there really needs to be more bike racks? Specifically where if there's been redevelopment recently, and the number of bikers has surpassed what the infrastructure can support, then there's definitely a need for more bike racks. Improving ped bike connections to MLK Junior Drive, full bike lane on Wilson Avenue, installing shelters at the highest usage transit stops, higher frequency for Wheels Bus Route 10, which travels directly through the neighborhood, invest in traffic calming measures on local streets, bike racks at elementary schools. Yep, absolutely. Emily B, do you know the condition of bike racks right now there? Or are you just saying that that should be something that we confirm? Non-existent, yeah, yep, at the new school, yep. Bike racks at park, yep. They don't exist. Improve bus network, more clearly create shelters. They don't exist. Okay, noted. Frankly, I feel like every bus stop in New England needs to have shelters. Maybe I'm just a wuss, but I like my shelter when I'm waiting for a bus. Enforcing stop signs, yes, and traffic flow, as there's a lot of people that ignore the stop and go full speed, even with people walking. So I'm interested in this one. Is this specifically for, are there a few streets that you're thinking of? Because if there are, one thing that the city could do is create raised crosswalks so that if you fly over them, it's not good for your car, obviously. But creating speed humps or like elevated street crossings could go a long way to like it's one step above the stop signs. Which lane? Wilson Ave. Yep. Okay. Okay, those specifics are great. Yeah. And if anyone else has any other examples of people who like of streets where people speed and might ignore stop signs, that's good for us to note. I'm gonna give us one more minute here. And then I do want to return to the housing slide, just because that has been something that is perhaps one of the greatest threats / opportunities in the South Norwalk neighborhood. Obviously, housing is a very big part of all of our lives. It's the foundation on which we build our communities. So I want to return to that one before we close out. Improve bus network, create shelters. Okay, awesome. Love that. Expand protected bike lane network and parking. Here's a map to list of existing bike parking. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Many streets are not divided by traffic lines. Can also be very problematic. Yes, I have experienced that myself in Boston, the crazy, crazy streets of Boston. All right, I'm going to return to the housing board. I would love to get some feedback on this. People, if you want to raise your hands, which I believe that you can do that so through like the Zoom, through Zoom features, then I can allow you to speak so we can talk about this a bit more. Or if you're in the mural and you just want to add commentary right on the board, that would be great. Because this is something that there's a lot of different options here, but we need some help to kind of determine what the priorities are. Where should the city throw their resources? What should we take a deeper dive into? Down payment assistance, home improvement and maintenance. Perfect. Thank you, Jocelyn. You get a gold star. I'm checking in the Zoom to see if anyone's raised their hands too. And feel free to share this link with other people that you know of that might be interested in this. This is something that we can kind of keep open for now, while we kind of while we work with the feedback that we've received from tonight, and kind of finalize the plan for the redevelopment agency. I know that we're just about out of time here, but we really value all of your feedback tonight, your attention to the presentation, and incentives for green energy home solutions. Stephen, do you have anything else that you would like to say?
No, I think this has been really great. All six, the discussion just on each board has been really fantastic. And
Yeah.
glad to get just the added note here from Jocelyn on down payment assistance. Down payment assistance is useful just so we know what to make marquee as we're kind of like thinking about this in the run up to the conclusion.
Yep, absolutely. And if you want to share this link with people in the community as well, so that we can kind of continue this activity, then that's also great. But again, I want to just thank you everyone for your time tonight. From zooming out, it's clear that we got some pretty good feedback here tonight on all of these boards. So thank you for your time and for your feedback. We definitely appreciate it. And to stay tuned on the next steps for the Norwalk Community Development Plan, you can visit the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency's website. I know that they're continuing to post updates. They posted there about this meeting, and so they're going to kind of keep the community engaged and informed through their website. And I hope you all have a great night.